Hit record. Okay, great. Okay. Thank you again, everybody, for coming today. This is a second training today on de-escalation of boundaries and communication. Today we have Katie and Bridget that's going to be leading today's training. And yeah, it's just the second in our series. So without further ado, I guess the ladies can take it over.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for having us. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. I see a couple of familiar faces and names from our last training. So thank you for coming again. And I think there's some new folks as well. So Bridget and I would love to learn a little bit more about who's with us today, just so that we have a sense of whether you're with KWO, if you're with DHHL, what your role is, and anything that you're specifically hoping to get out of today. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And then we'll give you a quick overview of who we are with Bo Simone Consulting and then run through our agenda today. But really excited to share the next 2 hours or so with you in conversation. And hopefully this can be an interactive conversation. We had some great engagement last time. It's much better, to not have to listen to Bridget and me speak at you for 2 hours straight. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if there's anything that you want to share a story about or have relevant experience with, we always welcome that. We're always learning from everyone that we do trainings with. And so we're informal. We'd love to have kind of a dialogue. So please feel free at any time to either put questions into the chat box. Bridget or I will monitor that when the other one is presenting, or just raise your hand and we'll call on you. So with that said, Richard, do you want to, you and your colleague sitting next to you want to introduce yourselves and then just call on the next person that you'd like to have go and introduce themselves?
Sure. So again, my name is Richard Medeiros. I am the NAHASDA Program Specialist at Department of Homelands. And we're excited to have everybody online today. And next to me is Shauna.
Aloha, my name is Shauna Mao. I work at DHHL, NAHASDA Division, along with Richard. And yeah, I'm here to just learn and hear what this is all about. I don't know who's.
We'll call on Lehua because she's here this time.
Oh, she is. Okay. And then my boss, Lehua.
So aloha everyone, Lehua Kinilau Kano. I oversee the NAHASDA program. I'm really grateful to see some of the people in here. I know Shauna didn't share, but she's often the one taking the calls and sometimes dealing with very frustrated people. And people who escalate over the phone. So just wanted to mention that. I'll pass it off to Cynthia.
Aloha, Cynthia Resentes. I'm the NAHASDA Assistant Manager, and right now we're doing our key turnover today on the renovation of a building that DHHL is launching as a transitional shelter. And with that, let me pick on Jennifer Keomaka.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Keomaka. I am the construction specialist at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, NAHASDA. I work with many contractors and lessees in helping them build their homes or home renovations or new construction.
Great.
Thank you. Anybody can be chosen.
Okay. Okay, let's go with Tanya.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Tehotu. I'm the Executive Director for Kealoha West Oahu. We are the awardees for the new DHHL Yorktown Transitional Shelter. And I pick Mokihana. Did Mokihana go ahead? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute still, Mokihana. Are you?
Okay, aloha, I'm Mokihana Komura, and I'm a certified HUD housing counselor with Hawaiian Council. And my caseload consists of Department of Hawaiian Homelands special people. So that's what I'm working with right now. Mahalo. And I'm sorry, I don't know who to pick. Let's go with Leona. Is Leona there? Leona?
Aloha, everyone. My name is Leona Hosea. I'm one of three, along with Mokihana, who is the HUD Housing Counseling here at Hawaiian Council. Um, Lately, we've been helping out with the OHA SNAP gift cards that we're um, getting a lot of phone calls about, and some of them are escalated. So this is a great program to help with those type of calls and other calls that we receive here at Hawaiian Council. Mahalo for having me today, and I'd like to turn it over to Kane Lindsay.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Kane Lindsay. I work alongside Mokihana and Leona at the Hawaiian Council. I am a HUD certified housing counselor as well. And I, same as Mokihana and Leona, we work alongside DHHL. We provide housing counseling to some of the recipients that they refer on to us. So that's kind of my role in this. So yeah, I will call on. Let's see. Angel.
Aloha, this is Angel. I work with Hawaii Community Lending and I'm a home preservation specialist in the Homeowners Assistance Program. I look forward to being in this class today to just hear about some of the techniques that we can use. I know that a lot of people who are applying for our programs often are under a lot of stress, so it's good for us to get the reminders of how to talk to them and how to help them get through the process that can be lengthy or complicated. Mahalo for having me. I'll call on Trisal.
Good morning. My name is Trisal Luna Calvin. I work for Hawaii Community Lending as the mortgage service manager and home preservation manager. Currently, we're working on a program called Ho'omana with DHHL and Hawaiian Council, helping folks get their arrearage and mortgage or utilities back on track. But I'm here to, same as Angel, listen and kind of get reminders of how to de-escalate situations with people on high stress, because I know right now, especially during the holidays and housing, can be stressful. Thank you. I'll pick on Alyssa.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Alyssa Palimo'o, and just like Angel, I am working closely with her as a home preservation specialist with Hawaii Community Lending, and we are currently enrolling clients, Native Hawaiians on Hawaiian homelands in our program that is collaborated with DHL, and same like Trisal and Angel. We're just here to learn and get new tools, resources, how we can support our clients and yeah, and learn new things. Mahalo.
Great. Okay, who haven't we heard from? Julie, let's see. Is it Daciala, Julian, or Julian? Is that your first name?
Hi everyone, this is Deja Leah, but you can call me Deja.
Deja Leah. I'm so sorry, I did not
No
pronounce your name
worries.
correctly. Thank you.
I work with Trisal, Alyssa, Angel, and Marissa, Shayna. We work in Hawaii Community Lending, but I'm a loss mitigation analyst, and what I basically do is I work on housing stability for our clients, and what I'm hoping to learn is techniques and strategies to assist getting our clients through hard times, and hopefully we can use that in our everyday use. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. How about
I
Malia?
can go.
Oh, Nancy. Yes, please go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, now Malia. Well, Malia, you go first.
Sorry about that. Aloha, this is Malia Cox. I work alongside Richard Lehua and in the NAHASDA branch at DHHL. I actually work on the environmental side of things, so I'm the one that causes the slow roll for getting repairs done. But
Mhm.
obviously, this is good information for everybody because we all have to talk and write, and being not an instigator of conflict is really important.
Love that. Thank you, Malia.
Okay, I can go. I'm Nancy McPherson. I'm a planner, land use and environmental planner with the DHHO Planning Office. And we do a lot of community meetings. I'm assigned to Molokai and Lanai. And yeah, we've had some escalation in some of our workshops over in Molokai, and I'd really like to learn more about de-escalating those kind of conflicts. And I will pass it to Ululota Norgard.
Thank you.
Olo. How you stay?
Good morning, Norgard Lota. I am with the planning office and I'm the community development specialist. I've been with the department for 17 years and I do a lot of coordinations with our statewide homestead associations and their board members, along with the beneficiary consultations like the rest of our staff here in planning. So there's a lot of interaction, and I feel this course will just add and enhance more skills and abilities to my performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody who has not gone?
I can go. Sorry. My name is Kalia Krummer from the Hawaiian Council. I'm the Director of Community Development, so I oversee our loan fund as well as our HUD department. And I look forward to this training. We've had a partnership with DHHL and we've worked with HCL for a few years now on some big projects. And of course, we've faced situations where we've had to de-escalate some pretty contentious moments with the communities that we've served. So I look forward to the discussions today. Mahalo.
I'll go next. My name is Marissa Guerra. I am also a loss mitigation analyst with Hawaii Community Lending, working with Alyssa, Deja, Angel, Trisol. And yep, I help assist our clients with housing stability, and I am excited to be here today to learn different techniques and, again, be reminded of, it is hard times. So how to comfort our clients during any hard time that they are having. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll go next. I'm Randy McEnroe. I'm a regional property manager for Hawaii Affordable Properties. I oversee approximately 6,800 affordable low income to moderate level properties throughout the state. I work in conjunction with DHL with one of the projects that we manage and another one that's being built in the coming, well, almost done being built. It would be opening up early 2026.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Sheena Kamaka, and I also work in the Ho'amana program in Hawaii Community Lending as a loss mitigation analyst, helping to serve our community in foreclosure prevention and housing stability. And overall, I hope to continue building upon my de-escalation techniques as well as effective communication with my team and my clients.
Thank you. Okay. Who has not gone? Chloe?
Hi, good morning.
I'm
morning.
Hi'ile, actually, Hi'ile Sniffen. I work with the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's Applications Branch and Homestead Services Division. All of our applications team is actually on the call. That includes Chloe, Elise, Nicole, Shantae, Lexi. A lot of us are a lot of our branches new, so I just thought I just introduce
Perfect.
everyone. And we're just here to learn techniques to help our beneficiaries apply.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that overview and introduction of your team. Hey, have I missed anybody?
I know there's a lot of people on. And
Yeah. All right.
I think anybody else want to introduce themselves that we might have missed? Don't take it personal. Don't take anything personal, as they say.
Yes.
Anyone?
Okay.
Okay.
Bridget, do you want to go?
Sure.
Okay,
So yeah, so I work with Katie and Zoe. Oh. Hello?
Are you there still there?
Yes. Something. Oh, I'm sorry. You started the PowerPoint and I thought maybe because it was snowing that my connection got lost. So I
Oh,
was
sorry.
worried for a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that, you guys. My name is Bridget Course. I work with Simone Consulting as a consultant. I know that you did a training with us before, and I'm new to this forum with you all. I have a lot of experience in affordable housing, about 25 years, but a lot of the work I did early on in my career really has shaped the way that I approach this work now. I did a lot of work working in shelters, doing community outreach, working in transitional housing. So some of the work really informs the training we're going to do today, thinking back on all the experiences that I have had, working with people who often come to us in a place of vulnerability, who are completely dependent on us for their survival. It can be a pretty overwhelming relationship at times, right? Because you have people who come in at their absolute most stressed out, scared, anxious space. And I can think back over the years, all the times I had to go into my toolbox and figure out how to de-escalate a situation or talk somebody through something that was really difficult. And I can also think back about all of the times that I fell short in that goal. And that's okay. I learned from those mistakes. None of them were life altering for me or for the person that I was working with. So it's nice to be here with you all today.
Thanks so
Katie?
much, Bridget. Yes, good morning, good afternoon. Again, thank you so much for having us and for joining us today. My name is Katie Simons, and I'm a supportive housing consultant and one of the founders of Bo Simone Consulting. Zoe LeBeau is my business partner. We founded the company back in 2019. But between Zoe and Bridget and myself, we have probably over 50, if not close to 60 years of experience working with tribes as well as Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians. We work with non-Native communities as well in about 12 different states, primarily Colorado, which is where Bridget and I are based, and then a handful of other states around the lower 48. And so we just, we're really excited to be working with DHHL. We have been supporting with technical assistance and a bit of training leading up to the opening of the Yorktown Transitional Shelter, and very excited to hear, Cynthia, that you're turning over the keys, and it sounds like, we'll be moving some folks in there before the end of the year, which is really exciting. So, we put together a training series kind of based on some of the clientele that will stay at Yorktown. Last time we did a training on sort of an overview of, housing first, harm reduction, supportive housing and what that looks like. And knowing that there are a lot of folks here who are working within DHHL and some other departments, it sounds like, this piece around de-escalation, effective communication, boundaries is really applicable not just to folks obviously who are experiencing homelessness or housing instability, but to everyone. And as you said, you know, to everybody who calls in or shows up at your office or is frustrated or confused or not sure how to handle paperwork or applications or whatever that might be. I think these are just great skills to have in general for, you know, working with people. And so, you know, really appreciate the approach, even in your introductions and what people have said about how you want to show up, and just to add some tools to your toolbox. That's what we're really excited about doing today. And again, just sharing stories and learning from one another. So we're excited to do this for the next few hours. Again, in 2026, we'll continue doing some additional training. We'll work with Richard on sharing out those details, but definitely want to get a little bit more as well into the trauma, kind of the definitions of trauma, some of the root causes of trauma, some of the reactions of trauma, and then that trauma-informed and culturally relevant care piece that is so important, again, we believe, when working with people in housing or really in any situation. So we're going to be doing that hopefully in person, along with a woman that we work with who does financial trauma training as well, which I think could be great for everybody on this call as well. So excited to, you know, to have this virtual training today. I know it's not the most ideal virtually, but we've learned to, I guess, get into a groove with this. And then hopefully we'll have the chance to meet some of you all in person next year as well. So with that said, I will just kind of advance here, and you're able to see the slides okay, Bridget? It's in the right presenter mode? Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep, and I'll just let you know when I need a slide forwarded.
Perfect.
Or it will be clear to you.
Katie, we're not able to see the slides.
You're not?
No.
Shoot. Okay.
I can see it. Richard,
I can see them.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys can? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
We
good.
can see it.
Let me try again, Richard, if I want to make sure that the right window is up.
Oh, yeah.
Are you able to
Okay.
view it now?
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, just really quickly, I did want to see if anybody had any kind of questions or reflections from the last training, if anybody wanted to share those. And then we will hop into the boundaries piece, talk about de-escalation and some strategies for, you know, preventing escalated situations, preventing conflict in the first place. And then we'll do effective communication, you know, active listening and promoting resiliency. So before I turn it over to Bridget, does anybody have any just kind of questions or reflections from the last training if you were in attendance for our last training? Okay, well, I know it's on the YouTube page, and so some folks maybe have watched the video recording, and if you haven't had the chance to, and if you're interested in any of those topics around supportive housing, housing first, harm reduction, please just check that out on the YouTube page, and happy to have any conversation, or, you know, if things come up today that kind of relate back to any of those concepts or principles that we spoke about last time, we can certainly dig into that a little bit more as well. All right, well, if Bridget is ready, I will just turn it over to her.
Sure. So my part here at the beginning is to really talk with you all and do some training around boundaries and de-escalation strategies. One of the most essential things when we're working with people to protect both our long-term ability to do our work effectively, but also to give them a space that feels safe and guided, that we establish very clear boundaries. Having clear boundaries is a kindness. It's a way to approach the work that's really important. It's almost like a guidepost. So sometimes we think about the word in pop culture, right? People talk about my boundaries, right? It can feel like maybe a harsh term, and it's not meant to be that way. And I'm hoping through this training, you'll see professionally, how every single day when we show up at work, when we're working with people who are struggling in some way, that we can very easily lose track of those boundaries if we're not making a practice of it. Slide. Okay, so what expertise is essential in setting boundaries? So with this, we think about our physical environment. So let's think about how our offices are set up. So I know in a shelter or a transitional housing space, sometimes these offices are shared spaces, and sometimes you have individual office space. So let's start with our boundaries in the physical environment. Is am I echoing, or is there somebody else talking?
I think if everybody could just mute themselves if you haven't already, that
Great.
would help.
Great.
Thank you.
So I will preface this with safety is our most important goal for all of you doing the work that we do every day. We want you to be 100% safe and secure in the work you do. That said, I've worked doing direct service for many, 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 many years. And although there were times where I was scared or intimidated or fearful, they were very, very few. And there were no times where I was actually harmed. So I don't want you all to feel like this is something you're going to run into all day, every day. I want you to know that it'll be very, very mild experiences on a daily basis, right? You're not going to have to worry all the time about your physical safety. But your spatial environment, so thinking about your staff offices, so how are they set up? Are the residents or guests in the transitional housing program going to be meeting with you in your office or in common space? How is that set up? If they are going to meet with you in your office, if you were having a closed door, is your desk positioned in a place where you can get out from behind that desk, right? If somebody wants to have a very difficult, angry confrontation with you? Is there an escape route? Is there a way for you to walk away? Is it safe, right? Residence apartments. If you go to somebody's apartment, I noticed this a lot in the years that I did the work. If I was knocking on someone's door, there was part of me that was also really curious about what was going on in there, because we often would be worried about people with unauthorized guests. We'd be worrying about, right, their housekeeping issues. We'd be worried about drug and alcohol use in the home. And so there was always part of me that was really nosy. People can tell when you're checking them out, right? So like keep some space, right? When you go to a residence door to talk to them, make sure you're making eye contact. It's face-to-face interaction. You're not trying to look over their shoulder. I know there's probably going to be inspection processes that you have for that purpose, and so try to keep that to a minimum. I also want to go back to staff offices and your desk. Think about what's on your desk, right? Is there anything on your desk that can be used as a weapon if somebody feels aggressive or is could potentially hurt you, right? So pens, rulers, scissors for sure. Those should be down inside the desk drawer. The top of your desk should be pretty sparse and yet welcoming. And then there's other things to think about with your physical environment. Are private papers put away? Other files, personal information for other people, and also for yourself. Like, do you have personal items on the desk? Your wallet, your cell phone. Think about all of those things. Your prescriptions, right? Things that we might put on our desk, but if we're sharing space with the people that we're serving, take another look at it and make sure that it's set up to have really clear physical boundaries. If you have panic buttons or emergency buttons, keep them in a place that's private. They don't need to see that that's available. We did do some training probably around trauma-informed care. You don't want people to feel like they need to call an you need to call an emergency response because of them. So keep those private. Verbal, this one has been hard for me over the years, especially as I get older. I call the people close to me so many different pet names. And so it's going to be hard, but things like honey or even with little children, be very intentional about using somebody's name, learn their names, use their name, and use professional language with people, slang or cursing or any of that. It goes without saying, but very professional language, friendly, be very friendly with people and warm, yet keep it professional. So your tone, firm but fair, right? Especially when you're requesting something of somebody. When
Bridget,
you're working with a
sorry to interrupt. It looks like Leho has a question.
Sure.
Just on the verbal, because I know you folks work in Indian country, sometimes for respect, people will say auntie or uncle, or so I'm just trying to clarify in those kind of circumstances because it's more of an issue of respect than it is. But then sometimes I will tell you, when somebody called me auntie, I'm like, oh, I think you young, you're older than me and you calling me auntie, but that's another conversation. But sometimes there's that level. So I'm just wondering, like in Indian country, how do you, because I hear what you're saying, but I also know sometimes it's this respect issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you're making a really good point, and Katie might have a difference of opinion with me, but I think just like in the South where people use ma'am and sir and things like that, and that's part of the culture. If that is a typical phrase that's used in your community and in your space, and people wouldn't see that as a pet name or a term of endearment, but more of a term of respect to address somebody, I would say that that is fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I think culturally, and when it comes to words that are used for forms and in terms of respect, I think that's absolutely fine. I think the big thing here is it's more around favoritism, I would say. So we wouldn't want to call somebody honey, sweetie, oh, my little pet. If we're saying that to one person, well, we should be saying it to the other person, or we should just not be saying it at all, right? So I think the boundary piece there is if you're just starting to show favoritism by using some sorts of terms of endearment towards one person and not the other, that can bring up the feelings of, okay, well, that might be a boundary issue for the staff person, but also it might make somebody feel like, left out, or they're not as liked, or they're not as important, or they're not as welcome. So I think maybe thinking about it like that is more the kind of the point we're trying to get across with the boundaries. But I absolutely think, auntie, uncle, cousin, those types of terms of endearment and really familial relationships, are okay. And then I think, if I get, yeah, I think I'll leave it at that and just say I think that is different.
Yeah, and I think too, as a staff person, what Katie's talking about with the favoritism, I think that's a really good point. I think that plays a big role in the boundary setting, why we have to have boundary setting, because people pay attention to how you're treating other residents, and if there's a perception of inequity in the way that you're treating people. I would be very tempted at times, or, especially if somebody was crying or upset, maybe to say, okay, sweetie, are you okay? Using those types of terms. And I think over the years, I became more aware of that, right? How somebody else might perceive that interaction. Verbal also, no diagnosing. This can be particularly difficult when we work with people who are struggling in so many different ways. And and we all have people in our lives, right, who struggle with some sort of mental health diagnosis or substance use, and we've seen it. We've seen it because we've done the work and we know people, but we're also not professionals and we are not diagnosticians. So I would stay away from the diagnosing of people, especially if you're not a licensed clinical social worker or therapist or somebody who has the credentials to do so. That's very important. Especially when you're in common space where there's multiple residents who could overhear and you're not in the privacy of an office, being very intentional about the conversations that you're having with residents. So I just noticed this at a building I was working at like a few months ago, doing some training with the front desk staff, and a resident from one apartment came to the front desk, wanted to talk about their neighbor who was a problem, and they were really going down a long, drawn out story, right? Like they were, and the front desk young woman who worked at the front desk, very gentle, very kind, very professional, but the boundary she needed to set in that space was, oh, this sounds like a bigger story than we can talk about out here in the common space. I want to respect your privacy. Can you just hold that thought for a moment so I can connect you with somebody to talk about it, or if we can go to a private space. So really always trying to redirect the conversation, because people will talk about their neighbors, mostly because they themselves are trying to figure out boundaries with their neighbors. And your role is to help them set those boundaries. But you yourself will have these places, especially in something like a transitional housing program or a shelter where people are coming and going, that people want to talk about each other. So don't allow for that. Also, and this can be tempting, don't share information about other residents with residents. And this can be an innocuous thing. I remember I was supervising a couple of staff, and something turned into a really big deal. And all she tried to do was connect two of the residents who both needed childcare for their children in the summer. And she was just trying to connect the two women to see if they could share childcare duties or something like that. But she did so without specific permission from either one of them. And so be really careful. I think these boundary slips happen in very well-meaning, well-intentioned, kind ways. But it did turn into a big drama. So thinking about that when you want to make a connection between residents. Oh, Katie has a car, maybe she could drive you to work tomorrow, right? Sharing other residents' information, even if it's positive, even if it's an opportunity for both residents, be really careful about that. Visual. What are you displaying to the residents? Frustrated, venting. I remember working in a really small nonprofit office. We didn't have a ton of space. We were crammed in there, and we were all doing case management and street outreach with people. And the staff often would find themselves in spaces where they needed to vent, and there was no privacy to do so. And so always really redirecting each other, in conversations. I just, like, if I'm having a hard day, I will rely on Katie to be like, dude, let's go for a walk, or let's go to the lunchroom, or, right? You're going to have colleagues who are having rough days and want to talk about things. Be very careful, especially if you're super busy and you're trying to do a shift handoff, that's done in some privacy, that you're not openly talking about residents or difficulties or things that are happening within their earshot. I think this is easier said than done. And this is why I'm really reinforcing it, because I know the intensity of on-site work at times and what it feels like to be short-staffed. So I really want to emphasize that. Can they see your email on your screen? right? Is your computer facing out when the resident is sitting there? They could potentially read some really personal information about other residents or even about you. Flyers, documents, are they appropriate? Are things appropriate to be hung up in your office? Or are you unintentionally sharing confidential information? The other thing too is personal effects. This is tricky for me. I live in a small town where everyone kind of knows each other, so it's almost impossible to be totally anonymous and totally separate from the people I serve. They're members of my community. Our kids go to school together. But to whatever degree possible, try to minimize, especially in that common space or common office space, personal effects. Where your purse is or family pictures all over the place. They could make people feel a certain kind of way that you don't want them to feel. So any questions about this with boundary setting before we go to the next slide? And I also would love you all, especially those of you who have more experience, to like, how would you have handled this? Because I'd love to talk through some of those scenarios with you, if possible. Slide.
Yeah, and I think the next slide covers a lot of kind of what you talked about already, Bridget, except for maybe the top part, kind of moving from the spatial to the physical touch piece, I think would be good to touch on as well.
Well, again, physical touch, right? We all know people who are huggers and people who are not huggers. Like we learn that in our personal relationships, like how people show affection. In a communal environment like a transitional housing, supportive housing, or shelter, it should be very important for staff to not be hugging residents. Residents will initiate a hug, try to create some boundaries that discourage that, whether keeping some physical space between you and them, reaching out your hand to shake their hand before they can go in for the hug. I've even, with the people who are particularly affectionate, I would even say I was careful about germs, illness. It's really important so that people don't perceive that there's a different type of relationship between you, especially the resident that's giving you the hug every day. People's intentions are very innocent most of the time, but the professional physical behavior is extremely important. Expect appropriate behavior in common areas, so physical boundaries between residents. So it's very important to set some boundaries about what's acceptable in common space and what's not.
Bridget, can I cut you off again? Yep. Just to have Lehua chime in. I think she has her hand up again.
So I totally get it. You're talking about in the space of the transitional shelter, and I understand that context. But you know, in Hawaii, we hug a lot. Yeah, I think Bridget, Katie's laughing because probably when I gave you your McNuts, I probably gave you a hug wherever conference we were at. I mean, even when people are accepting awards at DHHL, they're hugging, the leadership. And so I get it in the context you're talking about with the transitional shelter. So I'm not trying to, but I think that's something within our culture here in Hawaii. So I just wanted to see if you folks, kind of handle that again more in that Indian country context. I'm not sure if they have something similar, but just wanted to mention that.
I think it's community specific, right? So that's the hugging I can hear in Hawaii is pretty big deal. I am a hugger. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you discipline staff or like fire them or something like that. Like this is something that is a make or break somebody's job. I mean, I think it might be after somebody's been in transitional housing for a year or something and they're leaving and they're moving off to their first house, you might hug them goodbye, right? But on a daily basis, the day-to-day interactions all day, I think you should really try to keep a physical space between people. And I don't know. I think in every community, it's up to you to think about what your cultural values are and practices, and you modify, right? You modify and figure out what actually works. But in this context, I think it makes sense, like you said, Lahua.
Yeah. And I do. I mean, I agree, Leo, 100%. And it is cultural. I think Hawaiians have a way of expressing, right, just affection and love, in a way that, westernized communities don't always do that. I mean, I think there's just naturally maybe a little bit more distance as well in the westernized world. And so I think Hawaii and Indian country are great examples that do bring that more, that personal touch and hugging into the the way that they greet people, the way that they meet people. And so I think too, the only thing I would reiterate is it's about giving off that perception that you're giving somebody a hug because there's some way, better in a shelter setting, let's say, transitional shelter setting, for example, or that they deserve better, right, than somebody else. So I would just say it's really more in the context of like not trying to set people up to feel like they're not receiving the same kind of affection or the same kind of attention that another one of their peers in a shelter or even a supportive housing setting is receiving.
Yeah, we have another hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I can't read your full name because that screen's minimized, but I see a hand up. If you want to.
It might still be.
It's me, because I was going to ask
It's
if she
still
doesn't mind. Tanya oversees a shelter right now. It's not DHHO's that she's overseeing yet until the keys are turned over. And then Randy also oversees a Waimanalo Kupuna housing. I know she has staff. Just was wondering if either of you have anything to share in this context, since you do have facilities that you're managing here in Hawaii. I just thought it would be helpful.
Hi, this is Randy. For us, it's hard, especially with our kupuna, the kupuna in Waimanalo, because the first day I went there and I did a tenant meeting, I mean, we had the whole royal treatment, and the treatment came out where they had the conch shells and everything, and everybody came up with the hug and the kiss, For us, it's cultural, like Lehua had said. It depends on the context of the meeting as well. When we come to the property in general, just to visit or to, they're going to come up and they're going to hug and they're going to say hello. And in my opinion, and I'm raised very Hawaiian, very local, if one of my aunties, or we call them aunties or uncles, come up and try and give me a hug and I push off on them, I'm like, oh, no, sorry. It's offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Hawaiian tenants. It's just local tenants in general. Not only at my kupuna housing at Waimanalo, but any of my properties, they take offense to us pushing them away, especially if I went and hugged somebody else 3 days ago. I tell my staff, keep it professional, but still be sensitive. If you're going to set boundaries and you're not going to hug and kiss anyone as a greeting hello, then you do it across the board and you keep it as your boundary. But you cannot pick and choose your boundaries for certain tenants, because then they feel like you might be discriminating against them. You don't like them because they're white versus they're Hawaiian, or they're Asian, or, oh, maybe I'm not as clean. So I have staff that never hugs and kiss, and it's very, very, like, the boundary is set. And I have a staff member that's going to come in and every tenant comes in and gives them a hug. And they also have to identify the residents' boundaries, because I always tell them, do not initiate anything. If the residents wants to come and gives them a hug, you already know that's going to be the auntie aloha that's going to come in and give you that hug and kiss every time. Even if they're going to get in trouble with a violation, they're going to come and hug and kiss you hello first. And then they're going to take it. Then they're going to hug and kiss you and walk out, and they're going to be mad, but they're still going to do it because that's just cultural. Then you're going to have some residents who is never, ever going to want it. And so I tell my staff, you don't initiate, if you reciprocate. If you are not comfortable, then you can just, just say, I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable, this is not, that's something that I do, but how are you? And and then address them in a different way so that they understand it's not personal. So you have to be aware of your settings, be aware of your environment, be aware of the people that you're dealing with, and you deal with each of one of them separately and accordingly. I have one kupuna who at Wamanalo who will not hug and kiss you. She's the grumpiest person you're ever gonna meet in your life, and that's okay, but they show it in different ways. So I just think it's just being more aware of your surroundings and your environment and the people you're dealing with, but also having your boundaries where you're not initiating, but you're reciprocating accordingly to the situation.
I love that. I mean, I think you bring up a really important point that I should mention is the not initiating, right? Like letting the resident take the lead, and also how offensive or hurtful it could be. I don't want anybody to perceive this as being so worried about the boundary setting that you're pushing away people who are trying to hug you, or a small child's coming up to, how little kids are, wrap their arms around your waist to hug you. I don't want it to be perceived that way. And I love the point you made about letting people initiate it. And then the across the board, are you a hugging staff? Or are you a not hugging staff? And you practice that consistently. I think those are some really good additions to what we're talking about here. Anything else to say about physical boundaries?
No, she wrapped it up very nicely.
Yeah, she did. She did.
Yeah, good. I think we can move forward on that.
So again, the importance of boundaries, supporting clarity. So you're going to have a lot of rules and regulations and lease agreements and things like that people have to follow. And so your role on site is to remind people of what the boundaries are. And so it helps them remain clear about what is allowed and what's not allowed. I can think about working in it was a supportive housing project, but it has a lot of common space, right? People shared computer space, and they shared laundry space and kitchen space, and there were days when I went into work and I really did not want to have to remind people a million times about what the rules were about. Mostly the big issue was the laundry, because if somebody would do laundry, it often remain in the washing machine and not be moved to the dryer. And so some days I would feel like I was saying the same thing all day long. As you're reiterating the rules, they're not big rules, but they're necessary to keep the community thriving. Figure out a way to communicate that boundary very gently and very clearly. Like, hey, don't leave your laundry because there's 8 other people who need to do it today. It fosters respectful relationships, right? So if you're reminding people about the rules and the expectations, it helps them become better neighbors to one another. Not just a respectful relationship with the staff, but with each other. And those are really important skills that I think I've always noticed people are learning in transitional housing. Is maybe they've never set a boundary with a neighbor. Maybe they're coming to you to complain about something, or maybe they let things pile up with individuals that they struggle with and then they explode. So if you're modeling this really clear matter of fact, hey, switch the laundry out, or hey, please log off the computer and wipe down the desk after you've used it. And if you're finding a very friendly, consistent tone, they're more likely to be good neighbors and residents of the community. Fostering respectful relationships between one another. So sometimes you might notice somebody being unkind to each other. And so when there's a way to help redirect that conversation, in a more positive way. That's an important step to take as well. Promoting personal accountability. I think I've dealt with situations, I think, where people feel like they're going to get in trouble, right? Because they've been in some trouble and they're scared they're going to get in trouble. And they're scared that if they get caught doing something minor or small, it's all going to fall apart. And so figuring out a way to help people acknowledge that they've made a mistake or that they have to fix something and moving them out of this place of being defensive is another way to help that. If you set boundaries, it helps them take personal responsibility. Especially when you're doing this kind of boundary setting on the more mild ends with the more innocuous things that aren't make or break their tenancy. They're small things. Maybe they smoke too close to the building, or maybe they're not picking up after themselves. Like addressing those things in ways that help people take accountability. It prevents staff burnout. You're going to be more likely to want to do your job for years and years and years if you're consistently addressing things with people in a gentle, calm way. A lot of us have been trained to not speak up, whether by society or our family of origin or just who we are as people. We're non-confrontational. It might be more difficult to constantly be addressing things in a communal space. So thinking about burnout level, right? We want you all to love your job. We want you all to want to come back to work. And so we want to prevent staff burnout with boundaries. Slide. Any questions around this topic? So there's an importance with balance. There's importance with balance in setting boundaries. There's a zone of helpfulness. We call it the sweet spot, right? While I might not need a lot of help and a lot of support in one area, another person might need more. And so we're working with people who have individualized needs. You might have people come into the building who are in such a place of trauma or feeling unwell that they can't even fill out paperwork, right? They can't write down on an application what they need to. And so it's perfectly fine to sit with them and have that intake take 3 hours. If you're on shift for 8 hours, if it takes a long time and you have to break up that time because that person is really struggling to get through it, that's okay. On the other end of the spectrum, you don't want to sit with somebody for hours and hours and hours who doesn't need that level of support. Maybe somebody's been there for 6 or 7 or 8 months and they really are just want to visit with you. That's a boundary that you need to think about. And so this zone of helpfulness varies from person to person. And we adjust how boundaries are applied as needed. I could think doing some training early on with staff, like they would want to say, oh, we treat every single person exactly the same. We're trying to avoid that perception of favoritism. But the reality of our work is people are all different. Somebody might be sick. Somebody might not be able to read. Somebody might be in a really difficult space of being traumatized. And we need to adjust accordingly. So you might not get up from your desk in your office and go open the door to the front of the building for every single resident that walks up, but you might see an elder who's struggling to get in because of some physical things and they have bags in their hand and you know that they've had a rough week. Of course, you're going to get up and go open the door for them, right? So it's a very important way that we can use trauma-informed care. So when we've done training on trauma-informed care and really adjusting ourselves and our demeanor and seeing what people need based on whether we're going to re-traumatize them or not. We don't ever want our work or our boundary setting to re-traumatize somebody. Katie, did you have something to say about that?
No, I think it's good. I think, I think going on to the next slide, these are just, again, examples of like how we might be able to help people, understand where we are in that level, right? Of like the importance of balance, the importance of like, we're going to try to not escalate a situation any sooner than we have to. But yeah, I think if you want to keep going, Bridget, there's this kind of a spectrum, right, of changing, setting boundaries and kind of knowing that if we can stay in the sweet spot and in a less, severe space before we ever get to that escalation is kind of what we're trying to set the framework for here.
That's right. So I mean, I was looking at this slide earlier and I was thinking of scenarios, right? And say Katie keeps smoking on the front step of the building, and I tell her, Katie, you can't. You got to go X amount of space away to do that. So you're going to name the behavior, and you're not going to do it you're not going to finally address Katie smoking on the front step after you've been watching her do it for 3 months. You're going to do it the very first time. Yeah. You're going to, and I'm saying this because it's true. People ignore a behavior and then finally they're fed up after 2 or 3 months and then they address it. You're going to have a problem in your hands. Identify the behavior, smoking on the front step. Communicate and be transparent about your needs, limits, and obligations. Our funding source, our rules do not allow for cigarette smoking to happen within X amount of feet of the building. And this is very important because we have to be compliant with our funding sources, and I'm going to really need you to move or go somewhere else. Communicate what steps you will take if your boundaries are not respected. Consequences. So the first time, I probably wouldn't name a consequence, especially if the person was if Katie was compliant and said, "Oh, I didn't know, I'm going across the street." I would simply say, "Thank you." But if the very next day, Katie was doing that again, I would again reiterate, this is breaking the rules, right? And there will be some consequences, including you may not be able to stay here if this continues to happen. So could you please, and you escalate kind of the firmness of how you're redirecting and setting a boundary with somebody. Go ahead, question.
Lehua.
Yeah, sorry,
I
I can't see your name on the screen.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Randy or Tanya again. Sorry, I keep putting you guys on the spot. Only because
I love
know
it. Yeah.
You folks have facilities that you manage. Do you folks have designated smoking areas? So does that make it quote unquote easier because people know, okay, that's where you go to smoke? That's one question. And just not in general with smoking, do you have your rules somewhere like back to the laundry example, right? Is in the laundry room, do you have something that I'm just trying to understand if it's sort of made clear right there, or do you see staff needing to remind residents of these issues?
Lehua, it's Randy. Yes, we have rules with laundry room hours, house rules that we made sure that including smoking, designated smoking areas. There are rules. Are they all followed? No. Do we have to remind households? Yes. Is it the same households? Yes. So there are rules we do enforce, I always tell my team a violation can be perceived as threatening to a resident, especially those who, I manage properties that go anywhere from low income public housing up to 100% AMI, right? So with those that's in low-income public housing or just entering affordable housing at the lowest AMI or with a voucher, a violation is very threatening to them, more so than it would be somebody else who's just been housing for a while. So I tell them a violation is not always warranted for every situation or every house rule that's broken. Sometimes it's a simple conversation that you have with the resident to explain to them that this is what the expectations are. We're going to send you a letter in writing explaining to you our conversation or reiterating our conversation. I'm not violating you this time, but I'm making you aware that if these behaviors continue, hence smoking the unit, hence not adhering to the laundry room hours because it's a disturbance to your neighbors, you will receive a violation. But having that conversation, I always tell my team, it's not the content, it's the delivery. It's how you tell them something versus my staff tells me all the time, Randy, you tell them the same thing I told them and they listen. And I tell them it's because, number one, you have to empathize with the situation. I said, when tenants come into your office and yell at you, it's not because they're mad at you. It's something that happened 3 days ago, something in their life, and you're the first person that they are taking it out on. So you have to remember and don't take it personal. And the smoking in the units, there's no way to make it perfect. There's no way that you're going to have people not smoke in their units. I don't care what rules you put into effect. But if you're consistent and you talk to them, you violate them, and if you have to go to that point where it's a non-renewal because it's getting to that point, have that conversation, the simple conversation, because 9 times out of 10, they will feel so much more respected that you took it to just have that conversation. Don't accuse, and then when it comes to the point where, look, we had this conversation and you gotta drop the hammer, then you drop the hammer after you've already had the conversation, after you gave the reminders. But don't just drop violations or threatening of eviction or losing their home, because they're going to push back, and they're going to push back 10 times harder, and they're going to make your life miserable. So I think it's just that again, boundary and balance and respecting your residents and understanding that, a lot of these people who are coming from homeless situations don't know what rules are. So it's a learning process. It comes in stages, and you have to be patient and you have to understand that you're not going to always have, your neighbors are not going to understand their situation, and it's not up to us to share it with anyone else. But my answer to all the tenants when they call me complaining that we don't do nothing is, I cannot speak on anyone else's tenancy, but I can tell you we are aware of the situations and we are handling them accordingly. How can I help you with your tenancy? And just kind of sticking to that.
Randy, I'm so happy that you're on this training because, you're practicing this every single day, right? Like you're seeing this, and you could use this approach, right? With smoking, unauthorized people living in the unit, laundry, garbage, parking, right? There's like a whole number of things that come up. And the other thing about your delivery is, I think, in that you start to learn your residents' way, and some people need more direct communication right off the bat, rather than a gentle reminder. They might need a very direct conversation.
Let me tell you, and I'm sure Lehua and Richard can agree to this. Sometimes, no matter how much you try and work with a resident, we have some special tenants in our kupuna housing in Waimanalo. And no matter what you do and what they don't care. They're going to go above you because that's just what they want to do. And so I always tell my team, in this business, I've been doing it for 20 years. Grow thick skin, rub it off, don't take it personal. Because if they don't get the answer they want from you, they're going to go. And Lehua will get the call, Cynthia will get the call, Richard will get the call, Kaipo will get the call, then I'll get the call. And then I got to go back and kind of reiterate, it's never a perfect industry in housing. There's never the right answer. all we can do is do our best to, and we're not perfect ourselves, so I think as providers, we all want to do the same things, which is ensure that we're providing as much services, empathy, but still protecting the asset, but also protecting our residents and the owner's interests. But at the same, and it's kind of it's like a triangle, and we're always trying to connect those dots. But, you cannot take it personal when tenants just don't like you or just are unhappy for whatever reason and goes to other people to complain about you. Because if I took it personal, every complaint that our kupunas have, and Richard can agree, I wouldn't be here in this training today. I would have said, take this property back. You're not paying me enough, but it's because I want to make that difference. And it's not, and it is what it is. You have to just let it go.
That's right. That's right. I thank you so much. I mean, I think the only thing I would add to this particular topic here is that the more direct, firm communication, we've talked about the gentle reminders, the repeated conversations with people. There's going to come a time and place where you have to be very direct. You might even have to raise your voice, right? If somebody's being threatening to each other, step away from him right now. You might have to be very direct, raise your voice, be very clear with people, especially if it's a safety issue. If somebody's cursing or swearing at you and being verbally abusive, please walk away from me and come back and have this conversation another time. That is always appropriate. So there's the time and place for firm, direct communication. Stay safe. Again, this links to what I was talking about. There's going to be a time for you to be very firm and redirect people very clearly. Monitor your inner climate. Check in with yourself. I just make sure you're trying to stay calm through these things. You can go vent to your supervisor after or whatever. But it's number one importance to us is that you're safe in your job. Slide, please. So again, back to what Randy said, I think about this a lot in the work we do is the problematic behavior is just that tip of the iceberg. And you're the first person who gave them the space to completely unload on you, and it's not about you. So there's a million things going on below the surface with the people we work with. They might not have anyone else to vent to. They might have been hurt. They might have lost their job. There's a million things that are below the surface. And so keeping that in mind is really helpful as well. Slide.
All right. Great. Okay, thank you for all of the comments.
Put your hand.
And
Well, if
sorry
you're
about
not
that.
afraid of
Okay, started that too quickly. But I do want to move in a little bit now to just kind of sharing some techniques that we're going to talk about as we move into the conversation about de-escalation. So thank you, Bridget, for covering boundaries and all of the great questions and commentary as well from Randy. We really appreciate that. So just a couple of things, and I think, again, this can work with anybody, right? Any customer you're working with, any beneficiary you're working with, any client. This is just a very quick little video around kind of how we think about our body language. And this is a man named Ryan Dowd. I loved when you were talking about empathy, Randy. He really is the one who has taught this message of empathy is the answer, right? Teaching people, treating people as they are humans, right? We're all human. And so ways in which we can portray that has a lot to do with just how we show up with our physical bodies. And so I just wanted to show this quick video where he talks about some of the things that are the wrong way of showing like what you do with your hands and the right way of showing what you do with your hands. And it makes all the difference in terms of how somebody is going to feel safe or unsafe around you. So let's just take a quick look at this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about de-escalation. And you can see this video, right? Bridget, looks okay on the screen? Great. Oh, shoot. How did I just press the wrong button?
You just,
okay.
Yeah, you just had the video up and it
Okay.
went away.
What about your hands? Well, if you're not afraid of the other person, there's a wrong set of things and there's a right set of things to say with your hands. The wrong set includes hands on your hips, arms crossed, pointing, and the worst, fists. Because what all those say is, again, I want to fight, and we don't want our eyes to say it, we don't want our hands to say it. Instead, if you keep your hands at your side, or crossed in front of you, or behind your back, or in your pockets, or even just kind of open, those all say, I'm calm. And we would much rather have our hands saying, I'm calm, than I want to fight. What if you are afraid of the other person, though? Well, there's a wrong way, and there's a right way. And the wrong way is what most people do, defensive hands to protect your face, which makes sense. Unfortunately, it sends the message, I'm afraid of you. And again, we don't want our hands saying, I want to fight, and we don't want them saying, I'm afraid of you. There's a better way. When you put your hands together almost like you're praying, it sends the message, I'm calm. But because your hands are up by your face, if the person does become very problematic, you can switch to your defensive hands because your hands are already up by your face. By the way, put your hands together like this, not like this. That takes an extra second to separate them. What about your hand?
Okay. So that, that's pretty basic, right? And I'm at fault of catching myself, right? When I'm talking to someone, I'll often look down and I'm like, oh, I have my arms crossed, right? Without even realizing it. The closed off communication versus the open communication just really sets the tone, helps us set the tone in terms of how you're showing up to work with folks, right? So I think as we kind of think about body language, as we think about, where we're meeting people, and again, we'll kind of talk through the physical, the verbal, and the visual pieces of de-escalation. And a lot of this, again, goes to what Bridget had said about boundary setting, but we want to make sure that we are, giving space if needed and that we're taking our safety into consideration. So what we're trying to do is prevent problematic behavior from happening before it happens. Now, again, if we have to de-escalate, we're going to talk about tips for doing that as well. But the idea is that within the first 5 seconds or so of interacting with a person, we're actually setting a calm tone so that we are trying to reset any type of negativity or anger or escalation that is coming into the room or into the environment with the person. So, some things to just kind of suggest if somebody is kind of coming in at you hot, right? We want to make sure that that they are given the space if needed, that you are giving space, right? So you can remove a resident from or a client from a problematic situation by just asking a couple of quick things, right? If you're in a space that might be physically triggering, and it could be, I don't know, because of the color on the walls, or it could be because there are fluorescent lights, or it could be because there's a smell that somebody smells and it triggers something in their mind that was very traumatizing to them. We literally can remove ourselves and the client from the situation, right? You can say to them, hey, can you take a walk with me down the hall? Hey, could you come over here so that we have a quieter place to talk? Hey, are you okay if I just go and grab a quick glass of water and you could come with me? All of those things in terms of physically changing your environment can go a very long way if you are working with somebody who comes into your space or your office or to your shelter that's agitated. So really what you're looking for in this case is compliance. And when you ask somebody to come with you, even just to move, say, 10 feet or 20 feet to a different location, if they comply, we know that they're moving in the right direction. Okay, so that's what we're going for. Now, if they don't comply, right, that's where when we go back to those steps of setting boundaries, we're going to have to sort of use some different language to communicate what is happening and what we would like for them to do. But really, in most cases, if you ask somebody to, hey, just gently, can you come over here? Can you come even step outside with me for a minute? Can we take a quick walk? There's a really nice bench outside, or there's a swing. Would you mind coming outside with me? All of those things, I think, tend to just go a long way. So then with your words, right, a quieter voice also goes a long way. And asking questions or using a soft tone that requires attention or thoughts to get out of the lizard brain. So, when we talk about trauma and we talk about the fight or flight, I'm sure you all have heard of this where, when somebody is in that trauma state, they're going back into their reptilian brain, right? Or their lizard brain. And that means that they have stopped thinking rationally and all they are focused on is survival. And so what we are trying to do is help somebody get out of that lizard brain and get them back into what we call our wizard brain, right? We're trying to help them de-escalate. We're trying to help them reset their nervous system. So even if it is, I love this example. I was working with a case manager the other day, and he said to me that he uses this trick with people where if somebody is coming in and they're really escalated and they're mad at him, he'll just try to kind of redirect. And oftentimes he knows exactly where his glasses are. They might be on his head, they might be hanging from his shirt, but he'll say, gosh, have you seen my glasses? I have no idea where I put them, right? And even just that in seconds gets the person to say, oh, well, they're right on top of your head, or oh, they're right there on your shirt. It literally moves that person out of their lizard brain into a different space where we now can hopefully find some escalation, some de-escalation, where we can begin to work with a calmer brain. So again, we want to make sure just with visual, what are the messages on the walls around people? What is agitating the person? That, you know, again, it could be lights, it could be, like I mentioned, a smell, it could be loud sounds, it could be, you know, something that is on a flyer that, oh my gosh, the rent is due and it's a reminder and it automatically sends somebody into this trauma state of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, right? So what are we showing in the environment around us? And we just want to make sure that, you know, we're setting the tone, right? Both with our physical environment as well as our visual environment. And that does include how we're setting our body and our body language. Okay, so if we get into a situation where that person does not comply, right? They have not agreed to come to a different location with you. They haven't agreed to change their spatial physical surroundings. Then you do at that point need to kind of follow some tactics that will hopefully meet the person where they are and have them understand that you are there and that you are providing your sole attention to them in the situation, right? So in this case, right, we want to try to calm the person and de-escalate the situation, which means we don't want to meet their anger or aggression, right, with our own. We want to, again, as Bridget had mentioned, monitor our inner climate, right? Really try to create the tone and create the language that is going to feel calm, right? So we want to stop what we're doing. And if we need to ask people or other residents to remove themselves from the situation, or again, try to get somebody into a different place to have more of a private conversation with them, we want to do that. We want to, again, meet the resident where they are, meet the person where they are. And regardless of what they're feeling, try not to be judgmental. Try to validate their feelings and don't make make them feel that their emotions are wrong or inappropriate, right? So instead of saying, you can't act like that in here, you can't be, you know, you can't do this, you can't be displaying that behavior, you know, you might want to say something like, it sounds like you're very upset and this is a really frustrating situation. How might I help you? So really we want to focus on the emotions that the client is relaying to us. And then some other things, right, that we can do is we can clarify what they perceive the situation to be, right? So what are you having trouble with? What is making you so upset? What is the situation that we need to try to resolve? And this is where active listening comes in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is really where you're able to repeat back to the resident what you've heard, right? So let me just make sure I understand. You're upset because your neighbor's TV is too loud for you to sleep. Is that what you were saying? Is that what you're frustrated about? So really that reflection or mirroring about what someone has told you is going to go a long way for them to really, truly start to trust you and say, oh, yes, you are listening to me. Bridget, do you have your hand up? Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, hon. And I just called you hon, which is, you know, a term of endearment.
You like me best. So Jeremy has a question. Can you give my team tactics where we need to de-escalate a determination that is not favorable to a beneficiary? So Jeremy, if you want to unmute yourself and kind of give us an idea of what that sounds like.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick. So somebody comes into our office and my team basically determined that somebody is not 50%, you know, and not eligible for the Department of Hawaiian Homeland's program. So they would come in yelling, screaming. It's already a determination, that they can't change the answer. So that in itself would kind of scare, anybody from going out to meet with the public. So, couple tips and tricks, what would you, give to my team and say how they can somehow bring, de-escalate the situation a little bit more? Of course, the answer right now is here's Jeremy's phone number, here's Jeremy's, but to kind of give them a little bit of, what would I guess in your expertise, what would give them a little bit more confidence in situations like that to just bring the the level down instead of, because most times whatever we say pisses them off and it keeps on escalating. So yeah, that's just basically my question.
No, it's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that helps, and there may just be people who are going to continue to be mad at you and that you're not going to be able to do a lot for. But what the 5-second rule says is that if we can handle every interaction that we have with compassion and empathy, that we're going to hopefully be off to a better start. So the 5-second rule literally stops somebody in their traction, right? So if they are running into your office, they're yelling and screaming, they're already mad. The 5-second rule, what you can do, and in this order, right, is that you can actually approach someone and say, "Hi, I'm sorry. My name's Katie. What is your name? I didn't quite get it." And the reason that you want to do that is there are a couple of reasons. And you all may already have your way of welcoming people into the office. I'm not sure what that looks like, but getting up and greeting someone, right, is really helpful. So if somebody comes in and you're sitting at a desk or you're sitting behind a screen, standing up or kind of meeting them where they are can be very helpful. And what you can say again is you want to introduce yourself first. So a very simple, my name is Katie, right? Not my name is Miss Simons. What's your name? Because that feels formal. That feels like I am trying to have, a bit of a power trip. When I say, "Hi, my name is Katie, what's your name?" It just stops people right in the moment, right? From whatever their rant was or from whatever problematic behavior they are displaying. And if you can, right? And again, I don't know the setup of your offices, but if you can stand, right, with somebody and even reach out and shake their hand, that actually brings down, right, the stress level in somebody's brain. So even just shaking their hand, if they will allow for it, and some people may not, right? And it sounds like in Hawaiian culture, even if it is somebody that right? Or if it is appropriate in that moment, right, to be a little bit more warm and welcoming, we want to do that, right? You want to just try to shift somebody's hyperactivity and aggression into something that is, hey, can we shift from having an angry, you yelling at me monologue to having a conversation, right? And the reason that it's important first to introduce yourself first before asking somebody, "Hey, what's your name?" That may come off more as surveillance, right? Like, what are you asking me for my name for if I don't even know who you are, right? So it seems simple, but like just the importance of those steps in that order, right? So, "Hi, my name is Katie. What's your name?" And then, can we have a conversation about what you're upset about? I hear that you're upset, right? So again, using some of that validation of I hear or I can see that you are upset and I want to learn more, right? So what you're trying to do is to have a conversation with someone. You're trying to get them out of monologue, right? Yelling to dialogue. I can only help you or try to help you if I can understand what it is that you're going through, what it is that you're frustrated about. So, those are just and again, it doesn't, you may have people who, again, don't like the answer that you're giving them and they leave upset. But I would try those things and try to figure out a way in which you can then problem solve, but not for the person, with the person, right? So what we don't want to do is say, "Oh yeah, we can do that," or "I can take care of that," or "I'm going to promise you that it's going to be okay." We don't want to do any of that. One, because we don't know if it's going to be okay for the person, right? We don't want to set up false expectations. And we want to say, hey, I've got this resource guide. So I don't know, maybe you haven't seen it, or maybe we could sit down and go through a couple of things. We can't provide that for you here because you aren't eligible, but I do have these other resources and maybe we could go through them together. But it's really kind of about putting that back on the individual and saying to them, like, you want to help, but you also can't solve the problem for them, right? We're trying to figure out ways in which we can walk alongside someone, but knowing that if you don't have the resources or they're not eligible to receive resources from you, that may be a hard answer, and it may be that they need more explanation. And there are things that you can still do and your staff can still do to be compassionate, to be empathetic, and to try to offer some help. And I don't know if Bridget or anybody else has things to add to that. That's just my take on the situation.
Two things for me that work in that situation. Sometimes you're not going to fix it, right? If they're mad, but if you can get them to calm down, one of the things I would say, Katie talked about moving to another space. I always would say I needed a glass of water because we had water in our office, and I would offer them a glass of water. That I would have them sit down, go get us both some water. Often that would de-escalate things. Even for me, if I'm feeling anxious, just drinking a glass of cold water can, and I think it's similar to the folks. I also, if I had to deny someone a resource that they were desperate to receive, that can be really triggering for people. I would also typically have a list of other resources in the community that they could go to. And if I had time and they were extremely upset, I might even do some warm handoff kind of work with them, calling a shelter and seeing if there's space or something along those lines. So those are a couple things I did pretty regularly when people were activated. And we used to have to deny a lot of people resources for one reason or another. And those are really hard conversations.
Yeah. Great. Anybody else have tips for Jeremy on that?
I'll just reiterate what you folks said. Sometimes it is having the hard conversation because we've had to deny families because they don't meet NAHASDA's income eligibility requirement, and of course that's not what they want to hear, or the household size because they want a 3-bedroom but their household only allows for a 2-bedroom. As an example, you just walk through the process. This is what it is, and this is how we've come to the conclusion. Again, it's not always what they want, but like you folks are saying, we do our best to just say this is how that decision, we arrived at the decision.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to show another video. And this one you may like, you may not like. If there are any fans out there of Moana, I am going to show you a little clip from Moana. And this is just going to be kind of an example again of, what we call trauma-informed de-escalation, if you will. So if people are familiar with the film, basically we're going to see the clip where, Moana is about to return the heart to Te Fiti. So as you watch it, think about the moment and how it might reflect some of these sort of, trauma-informed de-escalation principles. And really, as we've talked about, empathy, understanding, right, and the approach to healing. So we'll go ahead and just take a quick look at this clip and then would love to get people's thoughts about it after we watch it. Okay. All right, let's go ahead here.
I have crossed the horizon to find you. I know your name. They have stolen the heart from inside you. but this does not define you. This is not who you are. You know who you are. Who you truly are.
The chicken lives.
I'm sorry about your hook.
Well, hook, no hook. I'm Maui. Tafiti! Hey, how you been? Look, what I did was wrong. I have no excuse. I'm sorry.
You know, it'd be rude to refuse a gift from a goddess.
Thank you. Kind gesture is deeply appreciated.
Right. Do we have any Moana fans in the audience? All right, got some hearts. Great, great. It's one of my favorites, I have to say. And so really, I think the point of showing this little clip is just that, Moana's actions and words, through the lens of trying to de-escalate Tafiti, right, in sort of this trauma-informed manner, is not with aggression or fear, right? It's not matching Tafiti's energy, right? But it's with this deep understanding and empathy, right? So when she states that she's, um, you know, stands before the once magnificent goddess, now shrouded in darkness, Moana begins with an acknowledgement of Tafiti's suffering. I have crossed the horizon to find you. I know your name. And so that really just is kind of a way to show, like, if you can meet somebody where they are, again, if they are bringing great anger, or aggression, or disappointment, or frustration, we can meet them and say, I do, in this case, I do know your name, right? In your case, you may very well. And what happened to Tafiti was they stole the heart, right? They stole the heart from inside you, but this does not define who you are, and this is not who you are. So this goes a lot more into trauma, and we will spend more time in hopefully in-person training around how trauma truly impacts all of us, and it can really impact the body in ways that show up much later in people's lives, but that trauma doesn't define who people are. It may be their trauma reaction, right, that you're seeing in the moment, but it doesn't define them as a person. So really just kind of, these skills, again, it's keeping the empathy and the connection with the person that you're working with, affirming their identity or affirming like what the space is or where they are right now. If you can, again, the intimate gesture, this kind of goes, this goes against what we were just saying about boundaries, right? In this case, obviously, she puts her head up against Tafidi's and they make a connection there. And then it allows, right, for Tafidi's shell to break down, to melt away, and this restoration of power, right? And that's kind of the beauty of the, you know, the healing power, right? Especially when it comes to resiliency. And this can certainly lead to transformative change. Now, I know that's probably not all going to happen, right, just in the moment that you're with someone, but I think those are just some good principles that we like to try to keep in mind when we are working with people who might be agitated or escalated or, you know, that are coming at us in a way that it's really hard. So again, I think this is a reiteration of sort of what we've gone over before, but you know, if you can regulate your volume and tone of voice, if you can model the behavior that you want this other person that you're working with to use, again, the open body language. So again, not fighting with somebody by putting your arms on your chest, or, you know, kind of turning away from them, or, you know, multitasking, really slowing down what you're doing, slowing down the speed of the conversation, right? Don't rush, be patient, listen, you know, allow for silence, use reflections. Again, make sure that you are saying to somebody, am I getting what you're saying? Am I understanding? Do I have all the information? And again, ignore challenges and avoid power struggles. This is not about you being right and that person being wrong. But it is about saying to them, I can, you know, being honest about what you can and what you cannot do, right? So again, empathy and setting those boundaries by saying, I'm really sorry that, you know, I have to be the one to tell you you're not eligible because our NAHASDA rules say this, that, and the other. You can even show them or, you know, write it out for them. And so I'm really sorry I can't help you with that. But if there's something else I can help you with, like getting you connected to another resource that might be able to help you, you know, I would like to do that. Lehua, I think you have your hand up.
If you don't mind, I think there's a lot of entities on this call. If you don't mind, DHHL, Hawaiian Council, Hawaii Community Lending, they're all dealing with, they kind of set it up front, right? Hawaii Community Lending is dealing with people who they're behind in some of their payments. Hawaiian Council is dealing with people who, I think they mentioned the OHA program, where they may have lost their job and they're looking for assistance. DHHL, we often get beneficiaries who are so frustrated. They don't feel like they're getting responses or answers. I just want to open up the space because there's so many people on this call that deal with this issue. And I just want to make sure if you guys want to ask questions, this would be a really good time, or bring up specific scenarios. I just, again, want to honor that space because I know there's a lot of people on this call that deal with just frustrated, angry, sometimes swearing. So just want to, again, allow that if anyone wants to jump in.
Thank you. Yes, Trisol?
Yeah, correct. So we actually all, like HCL, we all work from home. So most of our clients we deal with not face to face. We deal with a lot of clients on the phone. And so a lot of the time it's kind of hard. I know it's kind of hard to like de-escalate certain situations. Like, for example, we had one auntie who called in and she was very confused about our application process. And so we tried to sit down and we were being very empathetic, and she just was kind of like how Randy said, the one grumpy auntie that's just always grumpy. She just was very like combative with everybody.
Okay.
And so, and she also talked to different managers, and she was kind of just not wanting to cooperate to get it done. But then I don't want to say acted entitled, but was just like, why do I need to do any of the things that I'm doing? I should just get the money that I'm asking you for, and I shouldn't have to work for it. So in those kind of, and those are a lot of the situations with some of my teammates, and they can vouch for that, is that a lot of the people we don't know how to like it's hard to de-escalate when you're not looking at somebody. And so even in your tone of voice, it's like I'm like, okay, guys, got to be calm, kind of just like let them say what they got to say and then interact with them. But it's still hard when they're just going 90 miles an hour and you can't say, hey, so what's your name, because you already, or like, oh, can I get you a glass of water? So it's kind of hard using those kind of things to de-escalate. So I was just wondering if you guys had any other de-escalation processes, especially when you're on the phone.
That
Hi,
is a
Trisha. Hi,
please go
Trisha.
ahead.
It's Randy. I get that all the time because I have like 15,000 residents who call me on the phone and want to scream and yell at me and don't want to give me a chance to talk. So I have gotten very good at being very firm but professional. And as they're yelling, I raise my voice just a little bit and I tell them, number one, stop. Give me your name, what property you're calling me from, and lower your tone. If you're not going to lower your tone and talk to me with respect, I'm going to hang up this phone and you can call me back when you calm yourself down. I'm going to give you 2 chances. If they don't do it, I come back again and I say, again, this is your last chance. Calm yourself down, lower your tone, or I'm going to hang the phone up.
Yeah.
I've hung the phone up a few times and they call me back and they apologize. I've set that boundary because if not, they're going to be screaming and yelling nonstop. And it's going to be a battle, right? So I tell them straight up, this is my expectations. You're going to lower your tone, you're going to speak with me respect, and we're going to solve your problem as much as we can. If you don't, I'm going to hang the phone up and you can call me back when you're ready. And I have hung it up and they got pissed off. But guess what? When they called back, their tone was lowered. They weren't happy, but we were able to resolve it. But it's just having that boundary and how much you're going to take. And then when we have that conversation when they're calmer and they apologize, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you. I said, look, can I help you if you're yelling at me? If we both mad, nothing will get solved. And then they understand and then they kind of pull back a little bit. They're still pissed, but they're kind of treating us with a little bit more respect once I hung up that phone and set my boundary.
Thank you.
Love it, Randy. Thank you.
I wanted just to chime in. Thank you. And you're both right. I get the same thing. My people would be, I talk with them over the phone, and yes, I can't offer them a glass of water, but I listen. Yes, they do sound entitled or that we owe it to them. But I try to explain, and I do explain the place where I come from. I have guidelines and guidelines to follow. I have to stay within compliance. This is what I can do. This is what I can help you with. And offer other ways to, well, if we can do this for you, but let me try this. And then the tone comes down and I try to work with them. At the end of the day, if I can't help them, it's at least they know that I've tried and did some type of referral service for them. But at the end, yeah, maybe they didn't get or hear what they wanted to hear, but they got to vent and they got to kind of yell at me. But at the end of the day, it's like, these are the guidelines and I have to stay within. And this is what I can do for you. And we work with that. Yeah. But yes, you're both right. They can get mean and ugly and it does get escalated at times, but I gotta work with them, and do the best I can. But yeah, but thank you for hearing, for being here.
Leona.
Thank you.
Let's see. Is it Kalia?
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge what Randy said about, if they if things start to get out of hand and they get nasty with you to hang up the phone. And we all oversee staff. A lot of us oversee staff. And I think it's important to establish that boundary with our staff because it's come up before where they've been called nasty names and it's gotten to the point where I say, hey, look, if it gets to that point, just kindly ask ask that they cease, that type of communication with you. And if it doesn't stop, let them know that you're going to hang up the phone, because oftentimes they don't know what to do, especially if they're new to this this type of service, and they're not sure how to handle it. It's our job to inform them, hey, there are boundaries here. We're not going to allow people to speak to us in this way. The tone of respect has to be reciprocated from both us and from the client's end as well. And we've had to do a lot of work in person in Maui for wildfire survivors. And so I've noticed in the beginning, there were a lot of tears. I mean, we were dealing with an incredibly vulnerable population of people. And our approach had to be very sensitive. And it was different for each individual. The trauma would show up as anger, it would show up as tears. And I think we just had to, first and foremost, provide the space for them to be able to express themselves in a comfortable area. And I've noticed now the change and the shift in the groups that we communicate with. Now they're cracking jokes at themselves. And so that to me is an indication of they've moved, like they're in a space where there's some healing there, and they can do that. And they're doing that to themselves. And so it's nice to see, but still providing them a space to be able to speak openly and freely, and so that they feel comfortable. And they're still mad. You still get a lot of people where that trauma will still show up as anger, it'll still show up as yelling, but still we train our staff to just have patience. We got to pack our patience before we head into these situations, and that's first and foremost. That's all. Mahalo.
No, thank you so much. That's really helpful. Thank you. And Lehua?
Mine is more in the form of a question, and I'll ask it and articulate it. And I don't mean to offend anyone, but with all due respect, Hawaiian Council, HCL, even Randy, all these programs, even the facility Tanya folks, they're going to be giving resources to people that basically it's no cost to them. It could be significant funds, and I don't think it's unreasonable that they should be providing certain information. Otherwise, it's like, this resource isn't going to be available to you. This is one of the requirements. I don't want to come off arrogant, but at the same time, I feel like it's fair to say, well, we're asking for you, and what you could possibly get in return is not unreasonable. I'm just trying to ask you folks, is there an appropriate way to do that, or just don't? Or because I feel like sometimes the tactic or tone almost seems as if that this whole entitlement, Leona kind of touched on it when she talked, but I'm trying to figure out how to shift or frame, does that make sense, versus coming at it as if we owe them something. It's like, wait a minute, so I was just wondering what you folks think are appropriate based on, experiences you folks have had.
Yeah. Bridget, do you want to go first, or you have thoughts?
Sometimes I felt the same way that you feel in the past with people. But then when I think about it as a whole, and I think about trauma-informed care training and things like that, I think that there's almost like that tip of the iceberg. It comes off as entitlement, but what's below is the losing opportunities, the growing up in poverty, the racial discrimination, the millions of things that happened underneath the surface, that's causing people to act so entitled in that moment. And so in the same way that we talked about that tip of the iceberg, I think sometimes I would try to explain to people the opportunities that we're giving, but if they're in an escalated state or a triggered state, it's very difficult to get that message across. But I think that's how I approach it, just knowing that there's so many other things below the surface when they're acting in that way.
Yeah. And Lou, I think it's a really great point, because, especially now, I think we're seeing a lot of the debate around whether program requirements, right, or requirements to do something, whether it's work or school or treatment or whatever, versus sort of this, housing first approach where everybody deserves housing regardless of where they are with their mental health or their substance use or getting a job or whatever. And it is a very real debate right now. I mean, this is a debate that probably hasn't really happened at this extent for the last 25 years. But, and I will say, I think there's a whole spectrum, right, of, both, transitional housing, for example, or shelter that has program requirements, all the way up to, services that are offered without kind of anything in exchange. I do think, and I'm not going to say, one is better than the other, because I think everybody is an individual and everyone needs something that's somewhat different, right? So we have to kind of treat it all on a case by case basis. I do think, though, what we need to think about doing is teaching people a different way. Because if people who have been entitled, right, as you say, because they have depended on other people for food, shelter, money, whatever it is, and to an extent they've been enabled, right, because that's the kind of behavior that they've had to learn in order to survive on the streets or in shelters or wherever they have been, then it's almost like, why would they know any different once they come into housing? And so I think part of it is teaching people that the rules to surviving on the streets or, at food kitchens or shelters or where they're just getting, for lack of a better term, a hand out and there's nothing expected in return, teaching them that there's a difference in how you have to survive on the streets or in that environment to what you have to do in terms of learning new rules to survive and to thrive in a housed environment. I think oftentimes we just expect people, like, once they get into housing, they're like, okay, they're good, they're housed, but they don't necessarily know, right, that they can't continue to make those demands, right, upon their case manager or upon their property manager, or they can't, or their neighbor, right, that they can't continue to make those demands or have that sense of entitlement. But we oftentimes, I think, if they don't know anything different, or if it's been years since they learned or used those skills, I think it's really hard for people to adapt. And so part of that, I feel like, is on us almost to go back in time, if you will, and start teaching people the real basic skills and sort of that give and take. Again, it's moving from monologue to dialogue. It's moving from resolving conflict with yelling and fighting and hitting and punching somebody to resolving conflict through actually having a conversation and effective communication. But that takes a lot of time and effort. And so it's not a trait that you break overnight, but I think it is something that we can maybe think about how we ask ourselves, maybe we are expecting more people who don't even have these skills. We want them to be a certain way, but we understand maybe they will never get there unless or until they're perhaps taught a new way. If that makes sense.
So I know we're almost coming up to our time. I think, I don't know if there were other things you folks wanted to cover. More so, I just wanted to make sure, because this is the opportunity, again, DHHL staff, any of the service provider staffs, if you guys have specific situations, I just want to make sure you have that opportunity to ask any questions.
Well, we do really appreciate everyone's time. I think this has been such a great conversation. I so appreciate every person's perspective and opinions, and sharing your experiences based on what you've gone through and how you show up and do this work. We didn't get through all the slides, but that's totally okay. We will send these to Richard, and some, on this last slide we've included a couple of video links as well as some books, recommended books. The homeless training videos, this is the series by Ryan Dowd that I would highly recommend. Childhood trauma and how it affects health across a lifetime, and everything you think you know about addiction is wrong. Also, I think when you all talked about not taking things personally, not making assumptions, that really comes from the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. The Body Keeps the Score is another one that we'll talk about more when we do the trauma training. But yeah, we want to say thank you. We want to say, please, keep in touch. We'd love to hear further thoughts or comments about how you, what you thought of this training, what you took away from it, what you think could have been better. If there are other questions that you just didn't have that chance to ask today and you'd like some more information about, Bridget and I are absolutely available. And we'll continue to be available. As I mentioned, we're going to continue to work with DHHL through getting Yorktown up and open and operational, and then hopefully be out there for some additional in-person training next year. But thank you so much for your time today, and really the hard work that you all do. It's very clear that you care so much about your beneficiaries, the people that you're working with, and the work that you do. And so I'm honored to be here and have had this opportunity to be with you all for the last couple of hours. So thank you again. We'll stay on for the last couple of minutes if anybody wants to stay on and has any last minute thoughts. But if not, have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again. Mahalo.
Thank you guys again, Bridget and Katie, and everybody at Bo Simone for providing this for us here at DHHL, and for all of our providers, partners, and colleagues here. We thank you guys for taking the time to be with us today. I will have this up on our YouTube as soon as we can get the video up and ready, and I will follow up with everybody via email as well. And as soon as we have the next training scheduled, we'll follow up with everybody for that as well. Okay, thank you again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mahalo.
Take care.